Friedrich Paulus's final words shocked everyone. Before his death, he swore to God, the Almighty and all-knowing, that he would tell the pure truth. What he revealed stunned historians, surprised researchers, and even left those closest to him in disbelief. It was the kind of confession no one expected from a man who once stood at the very center of one of the most important battles of World War II. For decades, he almost carried this secret to the grave. What he finally admitted was the last thing anyone thought he would say. Friedrich Paulus was not born into military greatness. He came into the world on September 23, 1890, in a small German town called Breitenau in the region of Hesse. His father was a schoolteacher, a man of modest means and strict discipline. His mother came from a farming family. Nothing about his early life suggested that he would one day become a general whose decisions would change the course of history. His childhood was quiet, filled with rules, structure, and respect for order. As a boy, Friedrich was reserved. He wasn't adventurous, rebellious, or daring like some children. Instead, he was careful, serious, and methodical. Friends described him as polite, shy, and someone who always followed the rules. He seemed more like a cautious scholar than a future military commander. At first, young Friedrich dreamed of joining the German Navy. He loved the idea of ships, the open sea, and the discipline of life on deck. But poor health and the lack of family connections prevented him from being accepted. That rejection quietly redirected his path toward the army, a decision that would define the rest of his life. In 1910, at the age of 19, Friedrich joined the German army. He was placed in the 111th Infantry Regiment as an officer cadet. From the start, he wasn't known as a natural warrior. Instead, he stood out for being steady, observant, and reliable. His superiors noticed his attention to detail and his calm under pressure. These qualities made him more useful in planning and logistics, rather than in the chaos of frontline combat. When World War I erupted in 1914, Friedrich's role became clear. While some young officers earned their reputation by charging into battle, Friedrich worked in organizational roles. He managed supplies, planned operations, and handled staff duties. At first glance, this might have seemed less heroic, but it was vital. His accuracy and careful planning often made the difference between success and failure. He became known as someone who could bring order in the middle of chaos. Outside of the army, Friedrich's personal life brought him into circles far beyond his modest background. He married Elena Rossetti Salescu, a woman from a Romanian noble family. This marriage connected him to aristocracy and gave him social standing he wouldn't have achieved on his own. Elena was admired for her grace and strength, and their marriage gave Friedrich stability throughout the challenges of his military career. After Germany's defeat in World War I, the country was left broken. The Treaty of Versailles limited the German army to only 100,000 men, and many officers lost their positions. Friedrich, however, was able to stay. His discipline and reliability once again worked in his favor. During the unstable years of the Weimar Republic, he slowly moved up the ranks. Unlike many others, he didn't involve himself in politics. He simply did his job, and he did it well. By the 1930s, when Adolf Hitler came to power, Friedrich had built a reputation as a dependable officer. He wasn't flashy or charismatic like other generals. Instead, he became known as a planner and organizer, the kind of officer who could calculate supply needs, map troop movements, and prepare for every possibility. These qualities made him invaluable to the army, but they also revealed his limits. He was cautious, obedient, and loyal to orders, sometimes even when obedience meant disaster. From his modest childhood to his steady rise in the army, Friedrich Paulus appeared to be a man shaped by discipline, duty, and caution. He never sought glory, but history would soon place him in a position where obedience to orders would come at a terrible cost. When he joined the German army in 1910, he entered an institution proud of its Prussian traditions, built on strict discipline and hierarchy. This environment suited him perfectly. He wasn't the type to inspire soldiers with fiery speeches, but he earned respect as a reliable officer who followed procedure to the letter. When World War I broke out, Friedrich had already gained some experience as a junior officer. The war changed Germany overnight, plunging the nation into a conflict unlike anything Europe had ever seen. Many young officers hoped to prove themselves on the front lines, but Friedrich was once again placed in staff positions, where his careful, methodical nature could be put to use. Friedrich Paulus did not lead his men by charging across no man's land with a sword in hand. His role was different, though just as important. He managed the planning, supplies, and movement that kept armies alive. To outsiders, this might have seemed less heroic, but in reality, wars are often won or lost by logistics. Without food, fuel, and ammunition, courage alone could not carry soldiers forward. Paulus's calmness under pressure and his sharp attention to detail soon caught the eyes of his commanders. He was never reckless. Instead, he could organize complicated operations with precision, and that made him valuable. While he never became a famous battlefield hero during the First World War, he gained a reputation as reliable, a man who could be trusted with responsibility when everything around him seemed to be falling apart. Some of his fellow officers described him as stiff and overly reserved. But in an army where many men chased glory and fame, Paulus's steadiness gave him a unique advantage. When the First World War ended in 1918, Germany faced defeat and humiliation. The Treaty of Versailles crushed the country, slashing its army down to 100,000 men, stripping away territories, and forcing Germany to pay crushing reparations. Through the 1920s, Paulus remained in the military, though his career advanced slowly. He served in staff positions, studied at military schools, and refined his skills in planning and organization. These years were not filled with dramatic battles or rapid promotions. To many, he seemed destined to remain a respectable but unremarkable officer. Yet, his habits of caution, discipline, and detail were shaping him into the kind of soldier who could one day be trusted with far greater responsibilities. One thing that stood out during these years was his cautious personality. Unlike other officers who loudly criticized the unstable Weimar government or rushed to align themselves with Adolf Hitler's growing political movement, Paulus stayed out of politics. He focused only on being a soldier. This neutrality, whether intentional or not, protected him. He was not tied too closely to the old imperial system, nor was he seen as a radical Nazi. Instead, he was viewed as a professional officer, a reputation that would become increasingly valuable as the Nazi Party rose to power. His colleagues often said Paulus was not a man of vision or daring. He lacked the charisma of generals like Erwin Rommel or Heinz Guderian. What he had instead was a deep sense of duty. If given an order, he followed it exactly. If asked to plan the movement of thousands of soldiers, vehicles, and supplies, he did so with near-perfect accuracy. For superiors who valued obedience and reliability above bold ideas, Paulus was the ideal officer. As the 1930s went on and Hitler solidified his power, Germany began rearming in secret, breaking the restrictions of Versailles. The Reichswehr, Germany's small post, World War I army, transformed into the Wehrmacht, a massive war machine. Officers who had endured the lean years of the 1920s suddenly found themselves rising quickly as the army expanded. Paulus was one of them. His patience and long years of quiet service were finally rewarded. When World War II broke out in September 1939, Friedrich Paulus was not a well-known figure. He was a career officer skilled in planning rather than fighting, and he had risen more through discipline and loyalty than through bold victories. But war has a way of pushing certain men into the spotlight. The rapid growth of the German military created opportunities Paulus had never imagined during the quieter days of the 1920s. At the start of the war, he served under high-ranking generals, working in staff roles that involved coordinating the movement of men, tanks, and supplies across huge territories. These duties might not have seemed glamorous, but they were essential to Germany's early victories. During the 1940 invasion of France, Paulus worked as a senior staff officer under General Gerd von Rundstedt. The campaign was one of Germany's greatest triumphs, defeating France in just 6 weeks. Paulus's careful planning reinforced his reputation. While others gained fame in the newspapers, he remained in the shadows, respected within the army, but unknown to the public. His next step forward came when he was promoted to Deputy Chief of Staff of the German Army. This was a major achievement, placing him close to the most powerful generals of the time. Yet his style remained the same, reserved, precise, and cautious.